to subscribe to my channel, and while you're at it, click the bell to be notified of future videos. This block is called, I call it Chisels and Triangles. I've seen several versions on Pinterest, but I never saw a name for the block. The block's finished at 12 inches, and I'm showing you two versions. This first version uses 2.5-inch strips, and the second uses 3.5-inch strips, and both of the blocks finish at 12 inches. You can use your jelly roll scraps or jelly rolls for this, or cut your own 3.5-inch strips. This is what it looks like with scrappy version, and this is no particular size because it all looks the same. The patches are just bigger on the 3.5-inch strip version. This part up here is the information you need if you're using 2.5-inch strips. And if you're using 2.5-inch strips, you see we have 3 different accent fabrics for this block. If you're using 3.5-inch strips, we have 2 different accent fabrics. Patch A for the 2.5-inch strips is a 2-inch finished square. We cut 2.5-inch squares. We'll need 2 patches of each of the 3 accent fabrics and 6 patches of the background fabric. This are the AccuQuilt dies that will cut these squares. We are cutting squares, and I just realized this is not supposed to be here, so I'll have to correct that. This is a square, not a half square triangle. We're cutting squares because we're going to use stitch and flip to make these units, and we'll talk more about that in a little bit. Patch B is a 2-inch by 6-inch finished rectangle. We cut 6.5-inch by 2.5-inch rectangles. Again, we need 2 patches of each of the accent fabrics and 6 patches of the background fabric. Using 3.5-inch strips, we have the same patches, they're just different sizes. Patch A is a 3-inch finished square. We cut 3.5-inch squares. You'll need 2 patches for each of 2 accent fabrics and 4 patches of the background. Patch B is a 3-inch by 6-inch finished rectangle. We cut 6.5-inch by 3.5-inch rectangles. 2 patches each of the accent fabrics and 4 patches of the background fabric. Here are the AccuQuilt dies that will cut these 2 patches. You'll notice up here, AccuQuilt does not have a die for the 2-inch by 6-inch finished rectangle. Here are the fabrics I've chosen, but before we go over them, here is the block with the 2.5-inch strips, and it's pieced the same way, only these strips are smaller, and for the 3.5-inch strip we just have 2 of these units. We're going to make these units like this. So this is a unit, this, and this, and you could just as easily, if you're making a quilt, make these units and stitch them all together later. You don't have to necessarily make the block, but we're putting it in block form now. Here are the fabrics I've chosen for this 3.5-inch strips. Here are the 4 accent fabric patch A's and the 4 background fabric patch A's. Here are the patch B's. We have 2 of each of the accent fabrics and 4 of the background fabric. We're going to start by taking all of the A patches and use the stitch and flip method to make chisel units. If you're not familiar with the stitch and flip, I'm going to do a demo right now. And right after that, I'll show a demo of using the stitch and flip method, but with the folded corner clipper ruler. For the stitch and flip unit, I use a sandpaper board, and I'll have a link in the description to the sandpaper boards that I use. It's made by Jen Kingwell. And I also use just a small ruler. Normally I keep these near my sewing machine, and I draw these lines while I'm at the sewing machine just because it's easier for me to have this off to the side, but I'm going to show you today how I use it. So, and then I also have a pencil, just a regular pencil. And this is stitch and flip. We'll take all of these A patches. These are the squares we're going to stitch and flip. Turn them over, and I put as many down here as I can. and we're going to draw diagonal lines across all of them. I put my pencil down in the corner, near the corner, not on the very edge. Then I push my ruler up against it. And then I pivot the ruler to match this corner down here. So I pivot it a little bit, and when I see that I have enough room for the thickness of the lead, then I leave it there. And then just simply draw your line. The sandpaper board makes the fabric stay in place. So I'm going to do this for all of the 4 accent squares and the 4 background squares. All of my squares have the diagonal lines drawn, so we don't need the sandpaper board anymore. And we'll take our 4 accent squares and our 4 background squares. We look at the picture. There are 2 different ways you can angle this. We are going to do this way, where once we cut it, it's going to look like this, and this is called a chisel unit. We could do it this way, and then that would be facing the different way. So you'll need to look at the picture, and here we have step 1. It shows you exactly how to do it. These are the accent fabrics, so we look at the picture for the accent fabric, and we see that we'll need to cut this part off. We want it to flip up like this after we stitch it. So I take this to the sewing machine, and I'm going to stitch slightly to the right of this drawn line. So I'll do that and show you. Here's a real close-up of the stitching and the drawn line. You can see the stitching is just ever slightly to the right. This area here to the right is what we're going to be trimming off. And it's okay if you stitch on the line too. For me, I just get better results stitching slightly to the right. And once you've done with the stitching, take a ruler that has a 1/4 inch line on it. You're going to place that 1/4 inch line right on the drawn line and then trim it. Then you'll press the seams open, and you'll see this goes this way. Here's one that I finished and pressed open. So we're going to do that for all of the accent pieces. We'll have 2 of the green and 2 of the blue that look just like this. Next, we'll look at the picture. Here we're still on step 1, and this picture has you use the background rectangles and then the squares that we've marked, and these are going the opposite way. So here's the line, and I'm placing it like this because I want it to look like this when I'm finished. If we put these together, you'll see they form this look. So we'll put that to the side. Now what we're going to do, this is the part we want to cut off. So we'll turn it this way and stitch just to the right of that line. You stitch to the right on the side you're going to trim off later. So do that for all of your background rectangles and accent squares. And here are our pieces with the stitch and flip method. Now stay tuned to see how to do these chisel units with the folded corner clipper. The first unit is the chisel unit. This is 4.5 inches rectangle, and this is a 2.5 inch square. And you put the right sides together, and normally you would draw your diagonal line and stitch on the diagonal line. But we're going to take this ruler and line up this edge along the edge of the top piece. Then this flat edge lines up with this edge of the pieces, and you'll see that at the 2.5 mark you have a solid line that goes like this, and then it goes up, and so you line up all those 3 places. Then you cut. Now people who like to save triangles, you can have this other triangle, just go ahead and stitch there and you'll have a little triangle. So when we take this away, you see that these tell you where your 1/4 inch is. So you'll start stitching right here at this point, and you'll stitch a 1/4 inch down, and you'll end down here at this other point. Here it is stitched in red, and here it is pressed. So this is the chisel unit, and you can also place the angle going in the other direction, in this direction. Next we'll take, and we're on step 2 now, we'll take one of each of these and piece them together like this. And be careful that you put the background one here and the accent one here, the big rectangle pieces. I'm going to stitch these two together and make two of these. And do the same thing for the blue ones. They will go like this, stitch two together, press the seams open. Now we have our two sets made, and we're going to stitch these together. Just flip this around and stitch these two together and press the seams open. Do that for this one as well. Here are our two units, and we're just going to stitch these together. When you're stitching these points together, you need to match the seam lines so you can almost feel them with your finger. And you should be able to, when you fold this back, they meet and then show a little V here, because that's what they'll do once you stitch your seam line. So I put a pin there just so it won't move. Match these seams here and then match these. And your fingers will tell you if you've got it right. Oops, sorry about that. So I'm going to put a pin here as well. Now sew these together and the block will be finished. Here is the 3.5 inch cut strips. And here is the 2.5 inch cut strips. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, and while you're at it, click the bell to be notified of future videos.